Perfect. Thank you so much.
Yeah, my name is Mamun, MD Mamun Abdul Kaioum. I'm a PhD student at QUT Digital Media Research Center and also faculty member of Department of Mass Communication and Journalism, University of Rajshahi in Bangladesh. Uh, this is my presentation. The title is like Community Radio as uh, source of information for livelihood, crisis prevention, and resilience. Is case study with Bangladeshi indigenous communities. Before starting, Before starting more, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owner of the land where QT now stands. We pay respect to our elders, laws, customs, and creation spirit. We recognize that these lands have always been places for teaching, research, and learning. I also deeply respect the indigenous communities of Bangladesh who face significant challenges in securing their survival and preserving language, custom, and cultural heritage. If I discuss about how the indigenous communities is in Bangladesh, though there is like more than 6% of there are more than 6% of total population in the world, the indigenous communities, but it is only 1% in Bangladesh. There are more than 54 communities, recognized communities with more than 35 languages in Bangladesh, and they have distinct language, traditional culture, and the demographic composition is like they are living several parts of the country, and they are facing lots of challenges in regards to socioeconomic struggles, cultural erosion, and limited resources. As if we consider more about the uh, framing of indigenous communities in traditional media, because why I'm discussing this one, because as community radio is a platform, is operated by community people, for the community people, and it's like the democracy. It's like the community people are organizing this community radio. Though in Bangladesh, most of the community radios are operated by NGOs. Why this community radios were involved or evolved in Bangladesh? Because of the in mainstream media, in mainstream traditional media, these issues like regarding indigenous communities, these are very stereotyped, non-person, fragmented, and distorted coverage in the mainstream media. And coverage are basically scanty coverage based on nature, culture, and festivals. Uh, and community radio in retaining, there are lots of studies around the globe, like this type of community radios in retaining language and culture in Malay, and uh, there are some other studies. There are other studies in India between theoretical and ideological framework of community radio in India. If we a little bit discuss about the Bangladesh context and community radio movement from 1998 to 2024, or like the traditional media are very overcrowded with politics and crime in mainstream media, and since indigenous communities are minority in terms of their quantity, and they are living in very far from the city. So government and business and politics control the traditional media in Bangladesh, and in this regard, the community radio was launched to facilitate rural development, disaster, crisis management, and promotion of culture and language vibrantly. It, it made the scope for voice for the voiceless, like minority community, marginalized community, like the indigenous communities. And there are 19 community radio stations in Bangladesh, and involve like a 6.5 million of audiences in total. If I consider about the objectives of my study, my first objective is to identify indigenous communities in primetime news broadcasted on a selected community radio, to analyze selected radio content related to indigenous issues to assess the community radio stations' engagement with indigenous communities, and the last one is to unveil the effects of community radio among local indigenous communities in regards to their livelihood development. In regards to methodology, I have selected purposely one community radio. The name of the radio is Radio Podda, and what are the factors I based on selection of the radio, because it was the firstly launched, and the radio got the license because they were emphasized on aiming to concentrate on indigenous community development, local indigenous communities development, and there is a number of indigenous audiences of the area of its broadcasted area. I selected primetime news. Primetime news is considered which news mostly people listen more. It's in the evening, and I got 7 days of the content, and another content which is very important in regards to indigenous development or indigenous community, because this is Shekore Sandhane. This is like in search of root. Oh, this event is was produced by the indigenous community, and they broadcasted their event in this is event. And I conducted semi-structured interview among 50 respondents in two different sub-districts, and I analyzed thematic analysis is, and uh, in the meantime, I conducted three in-depth interviews with chief coordinator, station manager, and former news editor from the indigenous community who is and were involved with this community radio. In getting findings after discussing week-long primetime news from 24 to 30 September or 7:30 p.m., I got total news item is 114, and local community affairs event was broadcast at 87. I got only one indigenous issue of 49 second, with an announcement of broadcasting Shekore Santane in search of the road as a filler item. And the total news time of the prime time news for 7 days was 127 minutes. Overall, what I feel like I got only one an event or only one news, not news, like only one announcement of a indigenous related event, that is Shekore Sandhane, which is number is very scanty. And I also analyzed is the indigenous communities' involvement, and the Shekure Sandhane in search of the root is an excellent event with indigenous community by indigenous volunteers. What I got, 37 youth indigenous participated in the month-long radio reporting workshop with this community radio, Radio Podda. They produced 32 series of special events on indigenous communities, heritage, culture, language, and their livelihood patterns. Uh, and some of these indigenous community youths, they were recruited from local universities and colleges on the basis of competitive competition and oriented for radio, but not they left the radio station later after getting good job, because mostly these community radios, as we understand, these are based on some donor funded, and there are some fund of lack of funding as well. And I got one person whose name is Manik Shoren. He was honored as a news editor of this radio in 2017. And if I discuss about the findings, I got like why people, especially indigenous people, listen to the community radio, Radio Podda, for getting refreshment, their mental satisfaction, direction for everyday healthy life, like maternal and newborn vaccination, nutrition against drug addiction, and polybag use. And what I feel some of the youth audiences they discussed about feeling smarter regarding communication skill after getting messages from community radio. If I discuss about a little bit effects of community radio program, I got it as a trustworthy information, trust or the source for trustworthy information on agriculture, health, maternal and child health tips, veterinary care, motivation for education, and adverse impacts of drug addiction and climate change. I got from Kisku, who is 50 years old. He said, like, listening to public service announcement regarding the adverse impacts of using polybags during food carrying in Radio Podda made me conscious. When I give them any information when I give them, he was emphasizing on the community people of indigenous community. When I give them any information with the reference of Radio Podda, they do not talk much and feel encouraged to act accordingly. And I got another statement from Shoren. He said, I listen to Radio Pod regularly. I was used to smoking every day. As I learned about adverse effects of smoking from Gomvira, Gomvira is a traditional way of message dissemination, cultural event that was broadcasted in Radio Podda. I gave it slowly. Strengthen community communication skill and health promotion. I got from Angel, who is 22 years old. He said, I feel smarter than earlier, and the radio program helped me to improve my communication skill. It is not only in my case, but I believe such changes are also available for other community friends and listening to radio. Podda. It's another statement what I get from Murmu. She is 25 years old. I have learned about vaccination and nutrition of my children and healthcare issues for pregnant women. As per the instruction given by Radio Podda, I also request my community people to give up drug addiction. It's like what we see from their statement. They are learning some new issues from the community radio, which is operated with community people and the local language. Though we haven't got any specific event based on like the culture or other component of indigenous community people but they are getting in from the regular messages of community radio. The effects of what I get like income generation and savings. I have got another statement and from Hasda, he's a farmer from Novai Bortola. I have learned about pigeon farming and started farming at my courtyard, aiming to generate more income. We can also take measures to protect farmland from drought effect based on weather forecast disseminated by the radio. It is easier for us to understand because they use local language. Hasda illustrated it how local language is helping him and helping the community to understand and the messages is disseminated by community radio. And Olivia, she's a housewife of 35 years old. She said, I got a small saving strategy from Shekure Shandhane, which I discussed about. Shekure Shandhane is one of the event which is was produced by indigenous youth and based on indigenous communities demands and their language, their culture, their livelihood pattern, etc. Now we are saving handful rice every week, aiming to celebrate annual event in December. It is like they are learning some strategy how to generate income and savings. What I got, enhancing economic opportunities. The CR facilitates volunteer and producers to make them more confident in the future job market despite dropping out because of fund crisis and because of less job availability. They have established themselves with lucrative packages so that they can manage as their families. They are dropping out from the community radio, but in the meantime, are getting smarter. Are getting other jobs for their survival. The general audiences from the indigenous community are encouraged to involve themselves in small businesses like pigeon farming, livestock and agriculture farming, and handicraft. If we discuss about cultural preservation, what I found, it provides the opportunities to protect it and promote their language, their cultural diversity through documenting cultural heritage so that contents are accessed throughout the globe and future generation can get access and appreciate their roots because this community radio, they have their online platform, YouTube, social media, and Facebook, and their website, and they are broadcasting their event and at the same time. And voice of indigenous youths and local language make radio popular among local indigenous communities. So I have some recommendation I'm discussing in very briefly. It's like most of the indigenous community people to whom I interviewed, they discussed about more community participation in programs. This is what I discussed about Shekore Sandhane, about 32 series and more than 36 is youths of the community. They were recruited from the other communities because based on competitive process, they qualified based on their presentation skill and other issues. Sometimes they are, because I'm discussing about the Rajshahi, which is the education city of the country, and mostly from other areas they are coming here. More community participation in the community management, in the management of community radio, especially indigenous communities. Recruiting local indigenous people to increase indigenous people's active participation and promotion of messages targeting marginalized indigenous communities. They are expecting more content. Yeah, this is my presentation. If you have any questions or queries, I'm happy to answer that. Thank you so much for your
Thank
patience.
you. I really like your recommendations because I was thinking about what can be done to actually support initiatives like that. And your recommendations are highlighting the fact what's important, what need to be done. So thank you so much.